में सिर्फ एक ही सीन टोटली वो वर्ड्स को बुलाने के लिए फायर
I was thinking last maybe कि हाथ में कुछ पकड़ के क्यों नहीं गए. So it's scary. We become that helpless. अचानक unexpected हो जाए.
And yeah, another thought that another very strong association I got. Don't mean to typecast humans in a negative way, but I mean technically birds are known as very passive, peaceful. It's the human mind that's more conniving and manipulative, right? Animals don't operate like that, birds don't, but humans do. So I was just thinking that school scene, where we were all like sitting like how a mass mob is waiting to attack. All the qualities in the birds that they were showing actually are human qualities. This is what we imbibe. We have violence in us, and we can have destructive elements of genocide, mob, and that was being in this movie that was being depicted through the birds. So it was like a role reversal. That's the association that came to my mind, which actually got me getting into goosebumps. Actually, it's the human that tramples over everything around us, right? And यहाँ पे the director has pitched it that what if they coexist, we don't. So it's in the movie it's like an attack on humans. So that was a very strong association when they were sitting on the bars. That's what I would say. Comment.
With all these different ways of thinking about them, let's get into the analysis. As I first said, just to make a mention so you can see more of this movie. Psychoanalytically oriented movies, many people make, two of them very popular, Woody Allen and Alfred Hitchcock. So Hitchcock has this Psycho 1, Psycho 2, Vertigo, Spellbound. Spellbound is one of the movies we did analysis of last time. Spellbound, The Lodger, and Birds. And for Woody Allen, you would have Everyone Says I Love You, Annie Hall, Manhattan, and The Purple Rose of Cairo. This also I did, The Purple Rose of Cairo. It's a very good movie. The Purple Rose of Cairo. So something worth doing over and over again. I think in the series I'll take it up again. Purple Rose of Cairo. So let's look at the birds, the story. What is the presented story? And then look at the hidden psychoanalytic story. The presented story is very simple. Melanie meets Mitch in a city bird shop. They fall in love. She comes to his hometown, almost a village, and meets his ex-girlfriend, who is no longer the girlfriend, but cannot separate completely, so has settled there to be in almost a platonic nearness to that man. And then there are bird attacks. And the bird attacks start softly, become more and more vicious, more and more deadly. And then they are allowed to move out. If you look at the final scene, the birds are there, ready to attack, but they don't attack. They allow them to move out, and there is sort of an open ending. That if you look from a hero-villain perspective, it's an open ending. The villains who are the birds are not killed completely. They are not reformed completely. They are not changed completely. So it's an open ending. So this is how the movie is in terms of the presented story. Now let us look at the deeper psychoanalytic meaning of the story. One of the important reasons for choosing this movie is that this movie does not involve events between people. Usually movies involve events between human beings. And they are easy to analyze. These things are more difficult to analyze. But these things are also deeply psychoanalytic. Because obviously the events between human beings are minimum in the movie. It's a non-human element doing something, and this is not a ghost. They're separate class of movies. But if you leave apart those ghost movies and the UFO movies, then if you have a non-human element at the center, it's very easy to analyze because there is no doubt that it's an analytic movie in some sense. A parallel I can draw is with the Life of Pi. That Life of Pi also is a similar movie, where the man is stranded with a tiger on a boat. And there is nowhere to go, and it's only the man and the tiger and a few other people around. So tiger comes at the center. Whether you call him a villain or you call him projection, whatever you call him, he's at the center. So what tiger is to Pi, birds are to birds. They are the center of the movie, but not human elements. And these movies are deeply psychoanalytic. Like in case of the Life of Pi, the tiger signifies the aggression of the person, who himself at times is afraid of his own aggression. Similarly, in birds, let us see what the story is all about. Very important, there are 10 bird attacks in the movie. If you count all the attacks, there are 10 attacks. And each attack has some significance, some meaning. So we will go into the meaning of each of these attacks.
So, was standing, so page 3 celebrity. So I missed that part in the movie what they were mentioning about her. She being in the newspaper, something was related, but
Two things. One is she often comes on the page 3 because of various social events. And once she came on the page because she had jumped naked into a pond and the movie and the picture was taken. And that came on a tabloid. And that is what Witch's mother tells Witch.
right, yes.
That would you like to bring home a girl who has jumped naked and whose naked pictures have come in a newspaper? And that is where Witch tells her that I know exactly what I want, I can handle. So she is known to be a very flashy socialite, always on the page 3, and often controversial because of her boldness and explicitness. So it's a movie with non-human elements at the center, and obviously birds have some symbolism. So the symbolism here is that everyone is deeply repressed about their emotions and they express their emotions through birds. So the birds are symbols for emotions of these characters. That birds cannot be taken literally. It is not that there is a genetic problem with the seagulls or crows that they are attacking. If they have eaten something and the genes have gone off track, nothing of that sort. It's not that they have been exposed to some radiation and the brain has gone off track. Nothing of that sort. Birds are symbolizing emotions of people who are deeply repressing their emotions and very strong emotions. And we know in psychoanalysis that when you have very strong emotions and you repress them, the repression can lead to many things. One, if you are successful, you may successfully repress it, but it takes a lot of energy, so you feel exhausted and tired. You don't have any energy left because everything is consumed in that repression. Or it may end in projection, where you project out your emotions onto others. That is how in phobia, an innocent object suddenly becomes an object of fear. Because fear from somewhere else is now projected onto the innocent object. Or the therapist may look threatening and menacing for no reason. Because some emotions from somebody else are projected onto the therapist. Or the boss may look threatening for nothing that he has done. So these are projections. And then of course you have projective identification, which we'll not go in today. But that's another way of releasing your emotions, not in a healthy way, but in a pathological. So here what we see is projection. That everyone is projecting out and acting out through projections their emotions. So the birds that we see are seagulls, the ravines, and the crows in order of the being more deadly and more torturous. So what we see here are birds symbolize rage. Across the movie, except for one or two points, usually the birds are symbolizing rage. At one point, they symbolize disappointment and sadness. But across most of the movie, the birds symbolize rage. And rage can be of three types: a normal rage, a murderous rage, and a torturous rage. In normal rage, you would just have rage towards somebody. If it increases in intensity, you may feel like killing somebody. And if you cannot, then it turns backward on you, and then you have suicidal thoughts. And third would be the torturous rage. You not only want to kill, but you want to torture before you can kill. What Schopenhauer used to say, endless pain to a painful end. That kind of thing you want to perpetuate on somebody. Because that person has hurt you so much that only giving death will not suffice. He has to be tortured before he is killed. He has to suffer all that you have suffered and more. So you apply the 10% compound interest, and then the generation of rage starts, and it takes a particular flavor. So in this movie, we see all the three. Seagulls, by and large, symbolize an ordinary rage. The half crow kind of creature shown, half white and half black, they symbolize a kind of a slightly more hurting rage. Another type of raven type of creature shown, they symbolize the murderous rage. And then the worst of it, the big crows, the most difficult ones which are shown, they symbolize the torturous rage. So we see that most of the times the birds are symbolizing rage of different shades, and once or twice they symbolize something else. Let us look at what they are. So let's go into it one by one. Now, what are the personalities involved in the movie? And that is give us a window into the analysis of the events. Okay? Lydia, which is mother, classical dependent personality. If we were to apply DSM to all the characters, right, Lydia would come out as dependent personality disorder, which would come out as an as an idealist narcissist. Melanie would come out as histrionic.
Which in narcissistic way, the initial arrogance, first interaction, but apart from that, narcissism, how did it?
He is into a enmeshed entanglement with his mother, who is a dependent. That's one of the reasons that he is not able to break free from that entanglement. So his narcissism is not malignant.
Okay.
It's benign. And when you go deeper into any of the personality types, like for example, narcissism, people usually don't have the exposure to the fact that when you go deeper into narcissism, you have different type of narcissistic personalities. So there is a full typology of narcissism. So when you go deeper, you will have 7 different types of narcissistic people, or 8 different types. And how to classify, you have different people have done different classifications. One of the writings I did once was on narcissism. In fact, one of my core areas of interest is narcissism, because I am a narcissist myself. So I don't have to look at anybody. I just have to look inside to find what happens in narcissism. So my thesis was on this, and it came out as a monograph. It's titled "The Mirror in the Water," and it goes deeper into narcissism. And there I have discussed different typologies of narcissism. So you have something which is called an idealistic narcissist, who is very different from manipulative, exploitative narcissist. So there would be features of narcissism like grandiosity, a high degree of self-sufficiency, looking down upon others more silently, seeking perfection or seeking something great, not being content with the average. not being okay with ordinary. So those seekings would be there. And the grandiosity will reflect in decisions. But till it works, it is seen as courage, and rightly so. Like which takes on even the worst of criminals. Now that kind of extraordinary courage mostly would come from some pathology. It's very difficult to have somebody extraordinary without a pathology. Very few. So that is one part. Kathy comes out as the only healthy person of all of them. And that is how, even after so many bird attacks, she does not lose hope. And she still carries the lovebirds at the end. She still has that hope in love preserved. And one of the reasons why she has grown up so healthy is because which would come between her and his parents. So when you have a sibling very elder to you, he becomes like a half parent or a quarter parent, and he saves you from the pathology of the parents. So that is how that we see in everyday life also. That when the gap between the two siblings is very large, the elder one becomes like a quarter parent. And he saves the younger one from the pathology, and therefore the younger one usually is more healthy than the elder sibling. Kathy, sorry, I forget, Annie. Annie is also classical dependent. That after it is over with Mitch, she is not able to move on. She is still entangled. Classical dependent characters. And all of them, obviously, most of the personality disorders are anchored in very early life object losses. And that is where the causality part comes in. That there are different ways of looking at how personality disorders evolve. One way to look at it is to see all of them having a different path of evolution, and all of them are independent of each other. But that is not what we see in practice. What we see in practice is that in most of the cases there is a mixed personality disorder. It's not one. There is one in the front which is presented and two or three in the back, and as the therapy proceeds and you go deeper, other parts come up. And this points out to a different kind of causality, that maybe there is one trauma to which a man is responding in three different ways, and these three different ways we are designating as three different disorders. So there is one event from which three paths emerge. One comes in the front and the other two are in the back. So this presents a very different view, which is what I believe in, of the personality disorder. So if you're interested more in this, go to my video which is on the causality of personality disorders. It is titled the Valley Junction model. So this is a model that I have developed of personality disorders, the Valley Junction model, which goes into how it can all emerge from early life object loss, and different disorders actually are just different ways of coping with that early life loss, and why somebody chooses one and not the other depends on, apart from the loss and the time of the loss, other factors which are there in the personality. And therefore, we see that in most cases, we see mixed personality disorders. And that is where the DSM also needs to be revised, that we actually need to bring mixed personality disorders from a footnote to the center. The chapter needs to be rewritten of that disorder, personality disorder. So on this, there is a video, the call for revision of DSM personality disorder chapter. It's on my YouTube channel, where you can see why I discussed this, why we don't see, we see less of isolated, stand-alone one personality disorder cases and more of mixed disorder. It is just that because people don't know, they don't look for and they don't find. Yeah, I mean, psychiatry may be said, what you don't know, you cannot see. So it's that kind of thing, that because you don't know, you cannot see, and because you can't see, you can't find, but it's there out there right in front of you. And that is where often it happens that the presenting personality disorder is something and you keep trying to heal, it does not heal. Because behind that and deeper than that is a more difficult disorder which has not yet come. So This is an important part. So we see here Annie as a classical dependent. But on the look of it, she gives the look of a narcissist. Now let us go to the 10 attacks. First attack on Melanie happens after she meets Annie. It's a soft attack, and that is Annie's rage. That bird attack is Annie's rage, but Annie's superego is quite strong. She is very different from Melanie and Lydia, who have a very weak ego and a very weak coordinator to repress their feelings. Annie, therefore, has very strong coordinator, very strong ego. So her attacks are also symbolic, indicative. They are not torturous or murderous. That is the first attack. Because she knows that this girl is going to meet Mitch. And it was exactly the same way she had come from San Francisco. So she knows why this girl has come from. And that creates rage on the girl because it signifies to her loss of Mitch. Even more loss than it presently is. At present, she is living with a false hope that maybe nobody else will come in and maybe I will have it. That's one of the reasons why people linger on for so long around other people in a silent hope that something good will happen. So that is the rage of Annie, the first attack. Second attack that happens is not an attack. Actually, Melanie is with Annie and the bird falls dead. That is the only point where the bird is not a symbolism of, not a symbol of rage, rather it's symbol of hope. That the last, when Melanie tells Mitch on the phone that yes, I will stop over and tomorrow I will come to the Kathy's party, she realizes that now this girl has actually got into the family. And the last hope she had dies. And the bird that falls is a bird that symbolizes her hope. And the hope dies. And his hope dies. Third attack is Lydia's rage at Kathy's party because she never wanted Melanie to stay over for Kathy's party. And when she sees both of them talking all alone like a couple, both of them are enraged. Annie is enraged and Lydia is enraged. But Annie is not really enraged in the rage sense of the term. She is more sad. It's a deep sense disappointment. But for Lydia, it is rage. And the rage comes in the form of attack of the birds. So the third attack is Lydia's rage. The fourth attack again comes when Valerie talks about leaving for San Francisco and which tells her, Lydia provides a quick short way, the shortest way to San Francisco. And which says, there will be a lot of traffic, why don't you go this way? Which would prolong her being in the town. And that rage Lydia develops towards which is displaced onto everybody else because with which she is dependent and enmeshed. So she cannot directly put rage on which. Because the last thing the dependent wants is to destroy the object of dependence. The dependent lives only with that dependence. So the displaced anger comes in the form of bird attack on everybody. It's a Lydia's anger towards which comes over everybody. That's the fourth attack. The fifth attack is of the caretaker of the farm who is dead. And that is Lydia's attack, Lydia's rage towards her husband displaced onto that caretaker. Because that caretaker was like her object of emotional investment after the husband. Not that she would romantically or sexually do something, but emotionally she was invested because the dependent has to substitute the loss with somebody. The worst thing the dependent can think of is a vacuum. They can't stand vacuum. So if one person has gone, either his memory or somebody else has to substitute, they can't stand vacuum. So she, in some way, was substituting the husband emotionally by this person on whom the rage comes. As he sees Mitch and Melanie going closer and Mitch telling her that he wants her, doesn't matter what she has done. So that rage comes upon that person, and that rage also has a component of rage towards the husband. Why did you leave me alone? Because now I'm threatened with complete vacuum if this boy goes away with this girl. If you were there, at least there would be something to hang on to. But you have left me in this pitiable condition that now when this boy goes with that girl, I am left with a complete vacuum and I can't live with a vacuum. I can't survive. Obviously, a dependent can't survive. Emotionally speaking, of course. So the rage towards the husband and rage towards both which moves to that part. And that man is very brutally killed. So you see there that because there is no strong attachment to that man, the full rage, the full power of torturous rage is seen there. In other cases, Lydia's rage goes towards somebody, but it's an ambivalent rage in some sense. That the person towards whom the rage is towards the same person, attachment also is. And therefore, that attachment to some sense attenuates that rage. But here there is no attenuation. So you see the full power of that torturous rage. Attack 6. Lydia's rage, an ambivalent rage, attacks the children. It attacks both Melanie as well as Annie and the children. That's an ambivalent attack. Attack 7 is Melanie's rage. It's very interesting why. She talks to her father, and the father clearly says, "Don't be hysterical." And she actually speaks in the movie, "I'm not hysterical, it's truth." Which means before she would have been hysterical and said many things which were not. And from her personality, it's very clear it's a histrionic personality. And what she meets there, what precipitates Melanie's rage, is meeting that unreasonable mother, that old woman who would not agree to anything and keep opposing her. So what happens is, first, her father talks to her as though she was hysterical, always trying to dramatize and make up stories. And then this woman, like her mother, so she has a lot of rage towards her mother for abandoning her and not taking care of her in the childhood, which she talks about to Mitch. And when this woman also dismisses her and becomes unreasonable, the dismissal of the father and the dismissal of the mother, that together brings up her old childhood rage of dismissal. Because you can't develop a histrionic personality disorder unless you had attention deficit, unless you were dismissed very early in life. So attention deficit and dismissal would be very important elements in creating the histrionic personality.
But just to come back to the unregulated rage that there is that dispute that happens with that lady, and then there is a lash out that she does to that mother of children who kind of, she actually acts out, right? She slaps her.
Yeah,
Then
that
she
is
says, "Go
after,
away,"
that is
right?
that is towards the end of that rage episode.
Yeah, that happens like it's like a climax for her.
So the sequence is
Yeah.
talk with the father,
Hmm.
talk with that unreasonable mother figure, the rage exploding in the form of petrol pump going off.
Yeah.
That's symbolic of her unregulated rage.
That's when she comes after that.
After that, she comes back and the rage is still on.
Hmm.
And this rage has done two things actually. One, you can see the blowing off of the petrol pump and blowing off of the whole thing, right? Whatever is in the vicinity, in front of her. And the rage part of it goes somewhere else and kills Annie. Because Now the full rage of abandonment of childhood and dismissal has come up. And Annie becomes there a contestant who can lead to another abandonment.
If Mitch goes back.
If Mitch goes back because of some reason.
So technically it becomes an Oedipal triangle, in that sense, for between Annie, Melanie and Mitch. It's the two girls fighting for Mitch. If you see in that context also.
Correct.
That's why you're saying she felt threatened of Annie.
Not only that, there's definitely an Oedipal triangle. So there is an Oedipal fear of losing. Because of which the Oedipal rage comes.
Correct.
That is one component. If you look at the rage which is coming up, right, when you look at the petrol pump event, it's the pre-Oedipal rage. The rage is pre-Oedipal, right? We are talking of pre-Oedipal abandonment. So before the Oedipus actually comes into being, so if you go Freudian 4 to 5 years of age, if you go Kleinian 2.5 years of age, both have different dates of Oedipus. But this kind of abandonment that we are talking about is pre to both of them. So the pre-Oedipal abandonment is where the personality disorders develop. They are actually pre-Oedipal. So what we see here is if there is a pre-Oedipal rage which is completely out of control, and in the histrionic personality, the ego and the superego anyway would be weaker. So her rage is not as controlled as Annie's rage is or somebody else's rage is. Even Lydia's rage at some point is attenuated by ambivalence. But here you don't see any attenuation. It's a full-blown explosion of rage. And that explosion has a pre-Oedipal component which is acting out there. And part of the pre-Oedipal component and the Oedipal component goes and kills Annie. So that is her rage, villainous rage. And therefore those birds signify her rage. And when she comes and slaps back, by that time the petrol pump has blown off, Annie is killed. And she is moving towards the end of the episode. That's where she slaps that person and then calms down. The episode gets over. So the episode starts with talking to the father and gets over with the slapping of that lady.
So she's a very overprotective mother. So
Very
her
anxious.
issues with a mother being overprotective towards her two kids. So
the mother is very anxious. Actually, she is trying to pass off her anxiety as anxiety of kids. The kids are not anxious.
yes.
She says what will happen to the kids, but the kids are very happy. She is anxious. She is displacing her anxiety on the kids. Okay, don't talk about the birds. The kids will get anxious. Actually, she is getting anxious. So when she calls her evil, that is where she snaps and she slaps. Because that is something she would have heard even her mother say, probably. And so this is the seventh attack. The eighth attack happens simultaneously in the seventh attack somewhere else and he dies. Which is a part of rage of Melanie. Now attack 9. The birds come from the chimney. That is again Lydia's rage. It's Lydia's rage because she talks to Mitch. If you see the movie, she shouts, "What do you know about women?" She goes almost hysterical. Not hysterical, but it's actually a depressive episode. And we are told that after the father's death for 4 years, the lady was depressed. And Mitch was busy taking care of her. And she had these episodes many times over. And that kind of episode comes again and she shouts at Mitch, "What do you know about women?" Meaning you should leave this woman. That was the last attempt she makes of screaming out. But she does not go any further because in her, the ambivalence towards Melanie has started developing. When Melanie brings her that cup of tea and starts caring about her and starts doing something for her, like going to Kathy and seeing if she is well. Now, a dependent needs somebody to depend upon, and here she presents herself. So, the ambivalence starts developing in her. And the prospect arises that maybe I have one person to depend upon, to attach to. So it is not that I only have a threat of losing which, I also have a prospect of attaching to. That creates a split position into an ambivalent position. So then we have Melanie and Mitch, both are injured in that attack. And then the last attack, 10th attack, comes on Melanie. That is the last attempt she makes to have Mitch all to herself. Lydia's rage. So she tries to kill Melanie. But Mitch comes in time and as luck would have it, saves her. And that is where she sees Mitch risking his life to save her life, and she reconciles to the fact that it's not possible now to have Mitch all to myself. And that is where the reconciliation deepens. And the reconciliation makes her move from the split to a stronger ambivalent position. Ambivalent has started before, but now it's strongly and it's moving from all hate to now part hate, part love. Not love, I would say, but part acceptance like this. So this is how it moves. So this is 10th. Now, the ending is very important. In the ending, the 11th attack is about to happen but does not happen. They are all unarmed completely vulnerable, open to the birds to attack. They are not inside the house. There are hundreds of birds outside and they're in the middle of them. So the birds don't have to break wood or they don't have to break glasses. It's easiest for the bird. They are almost helplessly offering themselves that kind of thing. But the attack does not happen. The attack does not happen because Lydia's rage is immobilized by her ambivalence. That she accepts Melanie as now a part of the family and starts attaching to Melanie in a small way and starts helping Melanie genuinely for the first time. When in the car, we can see both of them leaning on each other. So for her, Melanie is an object of dependence, and for Melanie, she is the good mother she never had. So Melanie is searching for a good mother. She is searching for an object of dependence, and both of them tango because they can tango on this point. And therefore, the mutuality of self-interest is served, and that lays the foundation for a stronger bond between them. And that is how it ends. So what happens is the birds are still there. All the three. Soft rage, murderous rage, torturous rage. All the rage is still there. But the rage is attenuated by a good attachment and ambivalence. Which means Lydia's pathology is not healed. But the pathologist acting out is arrested. It is arrested by development of a new attachment. That the new attachment stabilizes her partly. And the blind firing of rage in all directions which used to happen till now no longer happens. And a new equilibrium is established. So we see here that in the end, what do people get? I'll come to it in a moment. But these are the 10 different attacks that we see where birds are symbols of feelings projected out of people. And people are doing what they are doing because of their own pathology. And the pathology is primarily out of early life experiences. So this is what we see. Now, the birds don't attack. So what is happening? The id is not purified. Birds are still there. The rage is still there. But the ego and superego have come into action. They have been empowered. So id is not able to have a free way. The ego and superego are there to control. Love is there, attachment is there to attenuate the rage of the id. So there is a sort of a resolution. The resolution is not a healing totally. The resolution is not a cure, and it's very important. Resolution did not always be a cure. As Lacan calls it, Some resolutions are what he calls syntheon, meaning the symptom is separated from the suffering. The symptom is still there, but the suffering associated with it has reduced by 75%. So he calls that kind of a symptom as a syntheon, a symptom so deeply understood, so deeply worked upon, that it's not erased. There is no cure in that sense of the word cure. But the quality of life is completely different. The symptom is separated from the suffering, and the suffering is reduced by 75%. So, and then with that, the person reconciles that this is the best all the medicine and all the therapy of the world can do for me. So I live the rest of the life with this, but I know how to manage this. I am no longer in acute condition. It's chronic, but it's mild now. It's neither severe nor moderate. It's mild, but it will be chronic always with me. And that's how a person reconciles, and that more often than not is the end of very difficult psychotherapy cases. That in most of the deep psychotherapy cases, we don't end up with cure, we end up with a resolution. We end up with a syntheon, where the suffering is reduced by 75% and the person is able to manage it because it's so profoundly understood, and many times over you undergone catharsis related. So this is how a resolution is reached. What is the resolution? The resolution is Lydia finds a new object to attach. So her dependent needs are met. Melanie finds a good mother she never had. She also finds a family where people care about each other. They take risks about each other. Because she has always faced a lonely childhood, as it is the case with many high-income children. They are brought up by nannies and they find a very lonely place in the world to be. Which and Melanie, they have a strange thing. It's a narcissist histrionic combo. Because which finds in her the liveliness which is repressed in him. And she finds in him the stability and the solidity which is less in her. The histrionic does not have stability. In Ayurvedic terms, the earth center is not there. It's too much of air. There's too much of air principle. The stability of the earth principle is not there. And in which she finds that, and therefore they are mutual complementaries. The narcissist also finds a gain in attaching to somebody who is stage 3. So the narcissist leaves out his grandiosity by attaching to somebody who is stage 3. And the narcissist also has wild fantasies, wild sexual fantasies, which he can satisfy more with a histrionic rather than with anybody else. And that part, of course, he would not discuss with the mother. So this is how the resolution, and Kathy finds a new, almost like an elder sister to her. And so this is how the entire family reconciles to a new equilibrium. And this is how the resolution is. So what is the story? It is the story of object loss. Why does Melanie have histrionicity? Why does Lydia have dependence? Why does Mitch have narcissism? Why does Annie have dependence? One way to look at it is, it's a story of object loss differently flavored in each of the individuals. And object loss by and large refers to very early life perceived abandonment. And in Melanie's case, it's teenage time real abandonment. It's also a story of dependence. We have two characters extremely dependent. It's a story of psychic equilibrium. That's very important. That there is an idea of psychic equilibrium, that at a point X you are healthy and then something happens Right? So at point X, you are healthy, there is an equilibrium, healthy equilibrium. Then a trauma happens, you are completely shaken up. And after some time, you again establish a new equilibrium. The new equilibrium is with the symptom, it's with the pathology, but still there is a new equilibrium. So one way to look at mental health is to look at it from standpoint of equilibrium. That you are constantly establishing equilibriums, whether healthy or pathological. And whatever is the equilibrium is a something stable which goes on. So what is happening? Before Melanie comes to that town, there is a kind of an equilibrium, a psychic equilibrium in the family. That Lydia has successfully put off Annie, and now the situation is a stable situation. Annie will remain at a distance. I will not have any danger related to losing Mitch, and I have lost my husband. I have found a quarter husband in a platonic sense in that man, and this is my equilibrium. And this equilibrium in some way takes care of my deepest of anxieties, they don't explode. And now with the entry of Melanie, the equilibrium is disturbed. From a dysfunctional but stable equilibrium, you have gone into an explosive crisis in equilibrium. And with the acceptance of Melanie into the family, in the state of resolution, a new psychic equilibrium is established in Lydia's mind and in the family. And in the mind of Melanie, because Annie is seen. So both Lydia and Melanie finds a new family she always longed for. Both of them, whose psychic equilibriums were disturbed for various reasons, now find a new equilibrium. So it is also a story of equilibrium. I call this kind of pathological equilibrium a tragic holding state. It's a holding state because it's stable and somehow you survive in that state where it's tragic also. It's dysfunctional, it's painful, but somehow we get used to it, and when the opportunity presents for us to get healthy and move out of that state, we don't. We get attached even to that tragic holding state. So that is one idea. It's a story of rage, loss, and rage of undoing of the psychic equilibrium. It's a story of entanglement, that people are entangled. Annie is entangled with Mitch. Mitch is entangled with Lydia. Lydia is entangled with Mitch. Uh, Melanie is entangled with Mitch, and Melanie is also entangled with her own past. It's a story of change, healing, and hope. That story tells us that in all the characters, change does happen. That healing does happen, and that there is always hope, if not of a complete cure, at least of a resolution. So, this is the first level of analysis. There is more material in terms of looking at the characters, looking at the trivia of how it was made, looking at Hitchcock and so on. We won't have time for that. With this broad analysis, I'll stop for the questions. Any questions you have?